Today's video we're going to talk about cold weather starts for diesel engines. So we're in the Northeast and it is 16 degrees Fahrenheit out today. Pretty chilly. And this time of year I see posts on people having challenges getting their diesel started. So let's talk a little bit about that today. So again, probably many of you know this, but some of you might not. So let's talk a little bit about the differences between gasoline and diesel. Gasoline engines combine gasoline, fuel, and air and shoot them in the cylinder, and a spark plug starts the explosion, which starts the engine and drives the pistons. Diesel engines don't have a spark plug, so they inject high pressures of diesel fuel and air, and then as that piston compresses it, it heats up the mixture so it ignites without the spark plug. So you need a lot of compression in order to get that, and a lot of pressure in order to build that, to get that ignite. In cold weather, it's much more difficult to raise the temperature high enough to ignition. So many diesel engines have help with getting that temperature up. Some engines use glow plugs, which are again kind of like spark plugs as far as providing that heat, but it's just a little heater that goes in each cylinder and heats up, kind of like an iron, I guess, and raises that temperature enough so that when it compresses, it's a little bit easier to ignite. Other diesel engines, like my bus, actually has a grid heater. Imagine a hair dryer with like a grid of metal that gets heated up, and so as air blows across it, it warms up. So kind of the same way, except for kind of going out and coming in. So as the air flows into the intake, it runs through that grid heater and warms up and goes into the cylinders where it can ignite a little bit better. Many diesels will have kind of a wait to start button where you turn the switch one way, allow all that the heating to happen before you can actually start it. Another challenge with starting in cold weather is that the oil is really thick. When it's warm, it's a lot thinner and more thin, I guess. And, the viscosity isn't as stiff, and there's less drag on the engine. When the oil gets really cold, it gets kind of sludgy and provides a lot more drag, so it's much more difficult to get the engine up to velocity to develop the pressure that you need to start the engine. So another starting asset you may have with your bus is a block heater, and you'll know if you have one by a plug that sort of comes out by the bumper, and you can plug it in to an electrical outlet. Highly encourage you to use a heavy-duty extension cord, because you're running a lot of resistance through there. So like at least probably a 12-gauge extension cord, maybe even 10-gauge, depending on the length of it. And you plug it in, and that will help heat up sort of the engine block. The other thing that happens with cold weather is the oil gets heavier, it gets really thick and sludgy, and so it provides drag and resistance to try to get that engine to turn over. And again, it's tougher to build that compression and the pressure you need to sort of ignite that switch. So, ignite that mixture. People will say that it's a good idea to plug in that block heater a good 3 or 4 hours before you actually want to start the bus, and that gives it time to warm that engine enough and get that oil so it's thin enough to be able to turn the engine over. Because of that compression that you need to get, it requires quite a bit of power in order to crank that motor over. So it's really important to have a strong battery. Actually, rephrase that, it's really important in cold weather to have strong batteries. I remember when I first bought this bus, it only had one battery, and it started fine through the fall, but once I get in the wintertime, it just really wouldn't start. So I had to buy the second battery in order to get enough power. So good, having at least 2 batteries will go a long way toward generating that power that you need. And here's how you test your batteries if you need to. Oh, it's bright out here. Get the little black dog. So I got my multimeter, and I'm going to turn this to 20 volts, so that'll kind of test around 13 volts, 12 what we want. And then I'm going to place the positive, the red one, on the positive ground of the battery first. How to get that all out of it, and then ground this to the frame. The black one to the frame. And I've got 12.55 volts. Should be good enough to start. Now in my bus I found that on the really cold days, if I haven't plugged it in, cycling the ignition sequence a couple times helps. And I think this gives the grid heater a little bit more time to warm up. So I'm going to turn the key to on. I'm going to listen for the clicking and to the cycling process to happen. Then I'm going to turn it off, turn it back on again, and then we'll see if it starts. So. Good boss. Something else you might want to consider for cold weather starting is using a diesel fuel conditioner. I would say up here in the Northeast, the gas stations, fuel stations start using winter grade fuel that you don't really need this stuff for, but doesn't hurt necessarily. It's, anti-gel. It also helps sort of reduce, kind of like a water eliminator in it as well, and helps keep the injectors clean. So not a terrible idea. I would say also all my diesel truck driver friends say keep that tank as full as you can. As the tank drops, it allows that surface area to condense a little bit more moisture in there and gets water in the fuel. So keep the fuel tanks full. So if you've got a full battery and a full fuel tank, you may get to, unfortunately, some other significant mechanical issues you might need help with, as far as maybe replacing globe plugs or the grid heater or the grid heater relay or something like that. Maybe compression issues, could be even some of the seals of the O-rings. So you may need some more professional help at that point, but I hope that's not the case. Oh, and one more thing. I almost forgot. I had to come back and shoot this clip. There's a big debate out there, almost rivals Red Sox and Yankees and less filling and tastes great, or whatever the argument is, about whether you should use ether or starting fluid for your bus or not. And in fact, mine actually has got a little button right down there with ether start, and you can put a can of ether over by the intake manifold, and you push that button and it releases some in there. But I don't use that. I'm a little nervous about it. Some people say that's the only way they've gotten diesel started in the past when it's super cold, and they've been doing it for years. They've never had any problems, and then you see other mechanics post pictures of blown apart engines. And so I think one of the theories behind it is that the ether is a solvent, and so when it gets into the cylinder, it dissolves or solvents, like I don't know what the verb is, the oil film that's on the cylinder walls. And then so now you're losing that film of lubrication around the edge. But so I don't know. I just chose not to. I think it's it could be a risk. It's almost like one of those things where Uncle Joe smoked 8 packs of cigarettes for 35 years, and he's just not carrying that cancer gene, where somebody else smokes 2 cigarettes and they're gonna spark that gene. So I just feel like I'm rolling the dice, and I think I'll rely on good strong batteries and good fuel, and hopefully my grid heater will continue to work, and we'll get the bus started up that way. So sure, again, take that under advisement, do your own research, but I just felt like I probably needed to address it. So hope that's helpful for any of you stuck in northern climes and get that icy weather. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to the warmer weather again. So again, hope it's helpful. Like, subscribe, do all those things you do. Ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them. And like I say, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.